Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today to learn more about how Brown University has optimized access to campus facilities documentation. Before we get started, and to allow a few more people to join here in the opening moments, I'm going to actually do two poll questions. And let's see if we can get a little bit of feedback from the folks that are attending. So this will help Monty and I as we cover these topics today. So hopefully everyone's seeing this quick poll and can answer the question, where do you currently store your documents? Just give that a few seconds here to see some responses. There's some coming in, trickling in here. So far, the overwhelming majority are network drive. Some just plan room, some other solutions. I'm going to stop this here in a second, but just wanted to get a sense. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close this. Let's just see what we end up with. Share the results real quick. So that's not too surprising to me. And then we'll do one more quick poll question. What is the biggest challenge that you face with your current method? Few responses coming in. Most folks are saying it takes too long to find information, but that's almost a little bit of an even split here. A little bit heavier on takes too long. Anyway, gives us a sense of what your current issues are. I'm not going to leave that open real long. Let's go ahead and close that, and I'll share that real quick. So you can see it was a little bit more on the takes too long. Anyway, I appreciate that, and that gave another minute or two for some more folks to join us. So let's go ahead. I'll hide that and start the actual presentation. So my name is Glenn Seehausen. I am the Senior Technical Consultant at Hagerman & Company, and I assisted Brown University as a consultant with the implementation that you're about to see today. But enough about me for now. I will come back after Monty is done and share a few things from my experience. But this is primarily going to be Monty's presentation. So let me go ahead and introduce him. From the first day I met Monty, gosh, over 15 years ago, I was impressed, and quite frankly, I continue to be to this day. And apparently the management at Brown were impressed too, because Monty started out in the CAD group there at Brown and was promoted very rapidly, reaching his current position today as the Director of Systems and Services for Facilities Management. Monty, from my perspective, has both of the overarching skills that are so critical to success in his role. He understands both the business side of facilities management, but he knows the technology as well and how to apply it effectively. He consistently turns complex challenges into opportunities for real improvement at Brown through technology solutions. I have no doubt that you will see both of these skills as he shares the story of document and drawing management at Brown. So with that, we'll turn it over to Monty for quite a while, and I'll come back towards the end. Thank you for joining us today.
And also thank you to Hagerman for giving me an opportunity to present. That's a nice honor. I appreciate that. So what I'm going to go through today, having some technical issues here, Glenn, already. All right. Do you see my screen, Glenn?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, there it goes. We're back. It fell asleep on me here. So, Okay, so let's get back on track here. So today what I'm going to cover is what is document management from our perspective, why document management, why we embarked on this whole effort. I'll talk about this specific project that we embarked on and what our goals and objectives were for the whole project. I'll touch on our implementation approach and the timeline, get into the Meridian design a little bit, and then give a demo of our Meridian web, our web access. That'll be a live demo. And then I'll show some screen captures of the mobile access instead of a live demo of the mobile because of the technical challenges of sharing my iPad over this WebEx. And then we'll do a wrap up, and then Glenn will jump in, and then we'll take questions and answers. So I'll try to go fairly quickly through this so that we can allow a good amount of time for questions and answers. So for us, what was document management? You know, it really distilled down to the fact that we were really trying to provide our documentation to our operations folks out in the field. That was really our main hunt first and foremost. So for us, it was really finding software that would allow us to put into a digital format all of our plans and O&M manuals and put them in a way that they could be described so that we could find them easily later on. So the pictures there show our plan room as it looked a number of years ago. Everything was hard copy, you know, the historical stuff was hard copy, a lot of hard copy O&M manuals, and then all the digital stuff that we've been getting for the last 10 or 15 years as well. So for the digital content that we had, you know, I saw the poll results there, you know, 68% said network drive. So that was our situation up until a few years back. And, you know, on the left there, we would have a folder that was divvied up by the building name. And then under that building name, that's where we would dump all the documentation. And then within that, we'd have subfolders that would be, you know, all of our as-built. So on the left, we'd have a folder with as-built. And then in there, it would be by project number. And, you know, I think we all know the challenges around that. It's very one-dimensional. So, you know, you can't query across all of these things. And, you know, you have to know what building that the project was in order to find it. And you don't always know that. For the hard copy documentation, I mean, we had a pretty good organized system, but it was still fairly inefficient. You know, we document, all of our documents were stored in files. They were labeled. We had a log book where you can then look up what you're trying to find, and then you go hunt for it in the drawer and pull it out. So you could get to it, but it's still, it's inefficient, even as organized as we tried to make it. One of the big drivers for getting some traction from management to get this project off the ground was not only so much for the providing the documents to operations, but the threat that all those hard copy documents that we had would be gone in an instant if we ever had a fire or if, you know, there were any water event. We, you know, over our server room, we had a water pipe, and if that ever triggered, it would have flooded out our plan room. So this got us a lot of traction, that risk of loss to get this project off the ground. And, you know, here's an example of some of those old historic documents. Here's a document of the Brown plat and lot map back in 1842. And then here's our Rhode Island Hall from 1873. And, you know, these are relevant, these plans, because this building went through a full gut and renovation a handful of years ago. And, you know, these are useful documents still to find out what the original structure was. So for the goals and objectives of the project, really, you know, the focus was streamlining access to the documents, and then also how do we protect and preserve the documents that we have, the hard copies. Really, so we set up these particular objectives that feed up to those goals, and that would be, first of all, we got to digitize all the content in the plan room, and that's for all the plans and the O&M manuals. And then we, in order to make this all work the way we had to make it work, to make it useful, we had to integrate data between systems. So our projects group uses a FileMaker homegrown system to manage all of the projects that we do. And they do over a couple hundred projects a year. So we have our projects database, and that houses all the critical project data that we needed to attach to these documents. So we had to integrate with that database. And then our IWMS is currently Famous, so we're integrated with Famous, and that we use that to leverage all of the location data and the asset data that's in that database, again, to be able to attach it to documents as we put them into the system. And then really it was about trying to make access easier for our technicians, and then also set the system up in a way that we could then transition into our project managers, our active projects being loaded into the system, not just our archives. So here's the timeline of what we went through. You know, back in 2011, we knew that we had to start digitizing, but we just didn't know what the best approach was. So Chad and I, our CAD manager, we embarked on trial and error with a bunch of different projects. You know, should we scan to TIFF? Should we scan to PDF? Should it be archival PDF? So we went through all that learning curve up front and started to get the scanning underway. And that's a whole separate presentation unto itself, that learning process. But in 2013, after doing a pretty big review of available solutions in the market, we did select Meridian, and a large part of that was the partner who we were working with. We've been working with Glenn for a long time, and he's been a trusted partner of us, and he knows the business. And that's a big piece of making sure you get this right. So we did our Meridian project needs assessment in 2013. We purchased our licensing around that time. And then in 2014, we had to do all of that database cleanup that I talked about with our projects database. And that was structuring the data in a way that it was clean and that it could be, integrate smoothly into Meridian. So that took a pretty big effort to get that data cleaned up. And then we embarked on the Meridian design, and that's really about how are you going to describe your documents? What are you going to call them? What's the common language that we can all agree on that references how you'll think about a document, how you're going to later go find it? And then in May of 2014 was when we first went live on our power user with the Meridian, where we could start loading the documents in. And then in 2015, that's where we continued to load our documents into the system, continued to, we rolled out the web access at that point for our most critical buildings, and that's where we opened it up to our trades operations. And then following on that in 2016, we went mobile across the board, and then we introduced the mobile component for Meridian as well. So the mobile solution that we went with the, we're still using Famous, and we still have Famous today, and we went with the AppTree mobile solution that we then tied in with the, ultimately with Meridian as well. So this is just some comments for anybody that's considering embarking on this endeavor. There's a number of solutions out there. A large part of our selection process had to do with, again, picking a trusted partner, someone that really knows the business and can, we started out with archives, and Glenn, you will talk about this later on, but he recommends you start out with active live projects. And in our case, we had to do the archives first just to get this off the ground. And his input allowed us to structure it in a way that we could segue into the active projects after the archives were loaded. Part of the design here is, again, how you're going to describe the documents so that you can then have a common language so that you can find them later on. And then how you're going to configure the system so it'll meet our needs as our needs evolve in the future, because everything's going to constantly change. So you want to get a good foundation in place so it can evolve. And then just some recommendations. We had a lot of people involved in that design so a lot of input from a lot of different constituents in the organization. And again, Glenn and Hagerman know the office dynamics that you're up against. You know, there's sometimes your project group is separate from the CAD group or separate from the planning group and the operations group. So understanding how that all works plays into how you go about tackling this project. And obviously you want to spend your time up front to get this right. So here's an example of, it's a really detailed design metadata sheet that was brought to the table for our design. And the point being, in order to develop this design sheet, you know, this takes a lot of experience, having worked with a lot of different customers. So this was invaluable to have a way of thinking about the types of documents, who's going to access them, how they're all going to speak to each other. This is really the foundation of the design of how all this stuff gets loaded into the system. And this takes some effort. There's a lot of work and a lot of thought that goes into this. But again, if you do this right, I think it pays off down the line. I'll show this when I get into my little demo here in a few moments. Really, foundationally, these are kind of the top level ways that we think of the documents we're putting into the system. So we have all of our project documents. So any documentation that's produced from a project that we do. And often we all know the deliverable from that are you know, what we would always used to call our as-built, we're calling our record drawings now. So the best and latest set that we get for what was actually constructed, that's what we're taking in as our project documents. And then we have master building, which are all of our master floor plans, our schematics, our riser diagrams, etc. And those are the ones that we're really committing to maintaining to kind of be, you know, the best up-to-date drawing that you can go to if you're looking for some information. And then the master campus, those are all the campus maps and utility plans for the campus. So those are kind of the three main buckets that we have today, and you know, we hope to expand on this. And then here's Meridian in use. Like all of our technicians have iPads, and out in the field, they get all their work orders out in the field, and then they can also, they have menu items to search Meridian, and they can search up documentation there out in the field or anywhere they have a Wi-Fi connection. And it has a faceted search on it so that, you know, you can hunt on a particular building, and then you can drill down from there on the operations type of document and the O&M manual. So, all right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into the web, the Meridian web component here, and show you what that looks like. So, Glenn, hopefully you see that. You see the screen?
Yes, looks good.
Okay, great. So what you're looking at here, this is just on Google Chrome. This is a web page running our Meridian web application. And this is what we started with when we first went live before that we rolled out the mobile. So what I'm going to do is you can have these different views here that you offer up. So I'm going to go into this one, everything in system. And this is my entry point into all the documentation that's stored in the system. If I don't put any criteria in here to search on, and I just hit search, it'll go out and it tells me we have, currently today, we have just over 88,000 documents in the system. And that's obviously continuing to grow now that we're putting active projects in, and we're still finding old documentation to scan and put in. But on the left here is where these are the attributes that are basically stored for the documents. And it looks like a lot of attributes, but the beauty of this is that, you know, if I give an attribute to a document for the project number, it's bringing along the project description, the project status, the project manager, the project planner, et cetera, et cetera. So we're not actually having to put all that data in. We just put in the project number. And because we've integrated with our projects database, all this other data comes along for the ride. And that's pretty powerful. At the highest level search, these are those 3 document types that I mentioned. So we have our building masters, our master building, our master campus, which are the maps, and then here's all the project documentation. So if I click project documentation, I've now just filtered every other attribute that's below that to just projects. If I then click on in my buildings here, I get a list of all of our buildings on campus. There's 11 pages of buildings here, or I can just start typing in something that I know. So I'm going to start typing in, it's searching across all those building names, looking for that word that I typed in. And then I'm going to go ahead and pick 70 Ship Street. Okay. So now I've selected one building, and then within that, now if I go to this project info right here, it's now giving me, and this is what sold me on this whole thing. When I first saw this in a demo, I said, I gotta have that. That is amazing. Because what this is giving me now, it's filtering all of the projects that have documents that have happened over time. And because of the way we name our projects, they're all chronological. You can also just do this as a chronological list as well. But our projects all have the year in front of them. So now I have, in chronological order, every project that happened in that building. And that's really powerful to be able to see. Here's the original construction of that building from 1912. And then I have 2 pages all the way up to, you know, projects that are going on it right now in 2019. And that's a really powerful way to look at your information. I'm going to hit a reset here, just clean this out, and I'm going to query on another building here. So I'm going to go to this building, Friedman Hall, which is a building that was just newly renovated. And if I look at the project data for that, I have 2 pages of projects here. This is from 1891, this building here. So if I go from 1891 to the original documents, I hit search, I have 17 documents loaded in of the original plans for that. And if I go look at, say, the south elevation, I'm going to download that document and view that in a PDF viewer. There's the elevation of that building from the drawings from 1891. And this is relevant, again, because we got this building just in the past year, and we used these documents, you know, initially to get the demolition work that was going to get done. And then I can keep continuing on with that all the way up to, you know, something more current here. Let me even go, let's see, to like 2016. Here's that building renovation that was just done. And, you know, I've got 168 documents for that building renovation that was done. The project started in 2016. The construction ended last year. I can now go down to our document subclass and further refine this and just show me all the record documents. And now I'm down to 49 documents, and these are the record documents here. And then I can go view what that floor plan looks like from the as-built that happened. So pretty powerful to get at the information. I'm going to hit a reset here. And next thing I'm going to show you is, as many people know, when you store your files on a network drive, one of the challenges you have are when a project spans multiple buildings. So you either copy that documentation into each building folder, or you have to have some other methodology. Meridian has a way of handling that. We had to work with this when we were setting it all up, but it works pretty nicely. So if I just go into projects, I'll show you an example of a project that really spanned a lot of different buildings. We had a campus utility project that basically touched nearly every building on campus. Because I've now selected that project, if I filter on building now, all these buildings were impacted by that one project. So I can then just go and find a particular building, search on that, and there's the documentations that somehow make reference to Slater Hall that were related to this utility systems. Again, that's pretty powerful because now whenever I come in, you know, if I just go to Slater Hall and look up all the projects for that building, I'll see that project there as well. So it has a nice cross-reference back and forth. Okay, another example I want to show you is, well, I think maybe I'll stop there, and I'll probably jump back into the PowerPoint and show you some of the mobile, what that looks like. So I think I'll do that. So forgive me for not doing this live, but the GoToMeeting didn't play nicely with the sharing of my mobile device, so I took some screen captures of this. So here's our mobile app. We're currently, all of our technicians have iPads, so I'm showing this on an iPad. I'm showing it in landscape mode. This is our AppTree Famous mobile app, and we've embedded the calls to Meridian right within our mobile app. So it's a menu item on the left-hand side. So what you're seeing on the left side is our menu item, and then the actual results screen is on the right. So here's a case where we go down to a menu item, search for equipment. We go to equipment. If you click on the barcode scanner, that's one of our barcodes. You scan that in. And once you scan that in, that calls up that equipment record, and it gives you all the attributes right out of the database. And then it shows you the past 5 work orders that were done on that piece of equipment. And then you can go down and see all the equipment information there and see the photos of it. You click on that and you see the photo of that. Then you can search on that piece of equipment through Meridian. So you can tie your O&M manuals to your assets and search on that. So if I come in here and at the very bottom there, I put in the equipment ID for the asset number, and then I search that through Meridian, it comes up with the metadata from Meridian. So it tells me this was from a project from 2007, the location, it's an O&M manual, etc. And then it calls up, I can open up the O&M manual, and all of our documents, our O&M manuals, are PDFs that we put in, and we made them searchable. So then here I'm searching on the word filter, and then it can take you right to that word in the document to try to get to what you're looking for. So that's handy if you know a model number and you're searching within an O&M manual, you put the model number in, you can bounce through the manual to get to what you need to. And then there's just an example of what that looks like. Okay, so what I want to do now is just highlight, you know, kind of the outcome of what happened with this. You know, overall, I would say we certainly achieved the goals that we'd set out when we first embarked on this project. There's no doubt that access to our documents is now fast and efficient. It also, you know, it highlights inefficiencies of your own documentation and things that we need to fix as far as, you know, getting the documents, right? You know, we found a lot of holes and gaps where we don't get the documents all the time, so we have to go back and chase those down. But certainly the documents that we have, it's really efficient to get to them. And then we did achieve digitizing and loading everything that was in our plan room. So at least we have some semblance of protection now, if anything were to physically happen to that plan room. As far as the objectives, you know, we did build that integration. We cleaned up all that project database, and we have a nightly integration now that all project data feeds into Meridian, and we have a nightly integration that all of our location data and asset data feeds into Meridian from Famous, and we'll be transitioning that over to our new IWMS as that work progresses. We do have mobile access to all the documents for our field staff, and you know, that's a work in progress as far as making it efficient and, educating and training our staff on how to best use that tool. But there are a handful of our guys that definitely rely on that capability. And then active project data is being loaded in, albeit we're really focusing on active project data that is really for use by operations. So that's all the drawing data, the manuals, the warranties, and contract information. And as an example of, these are some emails that we have, and I think this really shows the point of the efficiency of having all this documentation loaded in the system that you can quickly retrieve. So what we have a shared CAD group email that our project managers can use to email the CAD group to request documentation. And we do this rather than have the project managers go into Meridian and pull down all these documents themselves. We're offering this as a service to them, really because our CAD guys know the metadata probably better than anybody else. So when they get asked to pull all documents, they're the ones that know that they're getting truly all documents that we have available. So here's a request from a project manager to the CAD group asking for, please pull all the electrical and data plans for every floor on Prospect House. And then that request came in at 12:11 p.m. And by 12:27 p.m., Chad was able to have pulled all that documentation together. He drops it into a Dropbox and sends the link to the project manager that she can then share to the consultant that needs that information. Here's another consultant that we work with. He put in a request for all the information for a new project that we're kicking off. He sent that in at 1:29 p.m. in the afternoon. Less than an hour, about an hour later, our guys are able to pull together all the documentation that relate to that area of campus and pull together all the utility plans, the geotechnical reports, provide that all in one place to the vendor to work with. I mean, that's pretty remarkable turnaround time because previously, you have to go hunt for all that stuff, compile it, pull it all together. Here's another example. This one was for AV upgrade project that needs as-built structural drawings for when it was built. Can we get those today? That came in at 9:58 a.m. By 10:14 a.m., all that stuff was compiled and dropped into a Dropbox for that person. So I won't go through these. There's a couple more examples of them, but you get the idea. So with that, I know I went kind of quickly, but I wanted to make sure we have time for Q&A, and I'm going to pass it back to Glenn. And Glenn, I'll let you take it from there.
Well, thank you, Monty. Can everybody hear me? Can you hear me, Monty?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure before, since we already had some technical difficulties. And also, I'm watching the questions, and there's not a whole lot of them yet on there. So I want to encourage everybody, if you have any questions, please go to the questions area and put those in, because we've definitely allowed some time here at the end to get those questions answered. We certainly want this webinar to be very educational for you. So one of the things that I'm always a bit concerned about when I see a presentation by a specific university like Brown is that they have specific circumstances that they had when we first started working with them, and they have specific software that they're using. And one of the things that worries me is that folks will deduce in a presentation like this that, well, if my circumstance isn't like Brown's, then this can't work for me. Well, we've done this for dozens of universities, and everybody has different circumstances and different software solutions that we need to integrate with. So I want to talk to that a little bit to make sure that this comes across where, yes, we can probably meet your needs as well. One of the things we talk about, and what was a little bit different at Brown, is we always encourage our customers to start an implementation by first focusing on current projects. And quite honestly, the tendency is to do this the other way, and that was the case at Brown, to focus on archives first. Well, we strongly encourage people not to focus on archives first. At Brown, we had to, and I'll get to that in just a second. But the reason it works better to focus on what you're doing today in the way of projects, and then turning your attention to archives after that, is because you want to make sure it fits like a glove before you start loading in tens of thousands of archives. And the reason is, if you do it the other way around, if you load the archives first with an archive mentality, you're probably going to find out when you start to design it to align with your point forward strategy. Well, now you could end up with a line in the sand, so to speak, or a line in your solution where stuff has been stored one way from the past and a different way point forward. And then everybody you hire from then on, you have to say to them, well, you have to search this way if it's pre-2019, and you search this other way if it's post-2019. Well, the way to avoid that is you start with the projects first, current stuff first, and make sure it feels right to the organization, sort of somewhat future-proofing it. And then you start loading the past in as if you've been using Meridian for hundreds of years. In the case of Brown, literally 250 years. This will cause it to have that smooth timeline that you could see when Monty pulled up a building, and you could see everything, the current stuff didn't look any different in a sense than the past. The only difference is it was electronically generated, and the past stuff was scanned from hand drawings, etc. Now at Brown, we couldn't do it that way because their whole impetus for Meridian was to deal with this plan room. And so we tried to protect them from ending up with this problem, and I think we did a pretty good job of it. So we can start with archives first if that's what the challenge that you're trying to address is. And with the proper advice, we can make sure you don't end up with a serious problem that we see quite frequently. So point taken, or point here is that you can do it either way, but boy, you better get some good advice if you start with your archives, because more often than not, you're going to end up with a mess if you're not careful. Let's see if I have the ability to advance this slide, Monty. Doesn't look like I do. Could you advance it for me?
Yeah.
Okay. The other point I wanted to make is that Brown University had specific solutions at the time, and they're even switching from some of those to different ones as we speak. They had a homegrown project management system. They had Famous, and they're switching to, I believe, Plan On now, and their focus really wasn't on GIS yet, so they didn't have a lot of GIS, etc. And everybody's in different circumstances, so I just wanted to show you these are some of the systems that we have already integrated, what you saw. So we integrate with homegrown systems when those exist, like the project management system at Brown. But we've also integrated with off-the-shelf project management systems like eBuilder, Unifier, Archibus, etc. Many different IWMS, CMMS, CAFM systems. As you can see, I won't read that list, but all of those we have worked with. And then on the GIS side, I'm going to show a specific example of that. Obviously, most folks use ESRI, Esri, but we've worked with other systems. And then, of course, another important thing about a solution is you really don't want to have separate solutions for managing your live CAD documentation. And Monty didn't talk a lot about this, but the master's drawings are being maintained there at Brown, and those documents are living inside of Meridian as well. And so to the consumers of those documents, it's no different. The archives in PDF format or the live CAD drawings that are being automatically generated into PDFs, they don't want to have to distinguish between those. They just want what they need when they need it. But the CAD folks need to manage those properly. They need to have version control. They need to have an audit trail for them. And so it's really more effective if you have a solution that can not only handle archives in a PDF format, but can handle the complexities of the CAD and BIM world. I'm talking about AutoCAD with XREFs and hybrid files with aerial photos embedded behind them. I'm talking about Revit models with central models and work sets and other models referenced inside of the models. All of these things Meridian can handle, and in fact was designed from the ground up to handle them wonderfully. So I like to describe it that we photo, and TIFF. That's what I call the easy stuff. But we also do the hard stuff, CAD and BIM and all the complexities associated with reference management, etc. All right, can you, Ashley, switch it to my screen for a minute? Perfect. So this is live. I got permission from the folks at Michigan State University who also use Meridian, and I believe they're probably observing as I speak. And this is a live connection back to their GIS system at Michigan State. I'm sitting in Houston, Texas right now, and I'm connected live to this Esri-based GIS solution. So I'm going to click on this building here, and they could have put links directly to Meridian on this bubble, but they've got so many links that they decided to kind of send you to them a different way. And in fact, so this is the Biomedical Physical Sciences building, and these are a lot of different links that they've created. Well, a lot of these don't have to do with Meridian, but all these in the middle right here, DMS, Document Management System, are going to take me to Meridian. And if I click on, for example, I want the equipment and materials or the drawings in this building, I'm going to go for the equipment and materials. That is going to launch the same solution that Monty showed at Brown, which is the Meridian Explorer. So that's actually opening up in a separate tab, Meridian Explorer, and it's passing the building number from the GIS system in the URL. So we can actually pass parameters in the URL and thereby integrate with any system, quite frankly, GIS, IWMS systems that can spawn a URL and pass intelligent parameters in it. So it took me to a subset of the documents. At Michigan State, there's 400,000 files in Meridian or more, and this is 1,420 of them. And so now I can go in here and I can say, well, what I want is, whoops, I clicked too quickly there. I want the mechanical, and this is that same faceted search engine that Monty showed. I want the HVAC documentation, and I want gauges. And now I'm looking at 9 files in this building from the map that meet that criteria. Or I could go in, I'll reset that, and I can look at the actual equipment records. So this is the actual assets from their IWMS system. And I can type in something like, I want the pumps. And now I'm looking at all the pumps in that building. And I can query it, and here will be the O&M manual for that pump. I'm not going to download and view it. Okay, so we can switch back to the PowerPoint now. And I think we're about to wrap and start reading some Q&A here. Fortunately, there's not a lot of questions, so with the final 10 minutes or so. Oh, actually, sorry, there's one more topic I wanted to mention. Meridian also has a pretty sophisticated or a very sophisticated workflow engine built into it. And one of the challenges that Brown and most of our customers have is how to get all of this documentation at closeout or during a project and make sure they got everything that they need and get it stored properly. So none of this does any good if we're not collecting the right documents and making sure they're getting stored in the system and described correctly. So we've designed a workflow called the O&M Review Workflow at Brown, and this is about to go live there here in the coming months. And basically what it is, I'm not going to get too detailed, but the CAD folks load some of the all the documentation that were received. Then they send it on for trades review distribution, and somebody there decides how many different trades need to be involved in this review, because the project might have touched electrical and mechanical, but not fire, for example, or fire and not electrical and mechanical. So they go in and they tick the right people that need to review it, and they get emails. Then those folks review it and give comments, and they review it, the documents in Meridian itself. And then when they've finished their review and said, no, we're missing something, or we got everything, or we've been promised this, then it goes on to the preventive maintenance manager, and they button it up, so to speak, and make sure that they're happy with everything, and then it gets closed out. So all of this, it has email notifications to remind folks that their deadlines are coming, and why haven't you reviewed it, etc. This is just, if you do one more screen, Monty, for me.
Okay.
Did it go to sleep?
Yeah, same issue as before. There it goes.
Anyway, this is just a screen capture of when the document is in the trades review selection state. This is where that person goes and checks the right people that need to be involved in the process, and they get their emails knowing that there is now another O&M package that needs to be reviewed by you. So anyway, that's, I think, it. If you do the next slide, I think we're into, Q&A. All right, so Jennifer, can we hear you?
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Yes.
Okay, so there were a lot of questions. I tried to group them in somewhat of a similar manner so that we're not answering the same question 4 times. So the first one, kind of for Ashley, I guess, is will the slide deck be shared with attendees?
Yes, we can do that.
Yes,
and a link to the video we created,
yes,
correct?
That is correct. Mm-hmm.
So that's the easy one. Now, number 2, from a user, a document storage solution is costly. How did you acquire funding? Do we want to speak to that quickly?
Monty?
Yeah, I mean, I could certainly speak to that. You know, how much can you save by streamlining the access to the documents? You know, there's some cost savings there by streamlining that process. For us, really, though, you know, where I got a lot of traction was that risk of loss, you know, from fire or water. And, you know, knowing that there was a potential we could lose all that old historic documentation, that was enough to get the initial funding for this off the ground. But certainly, any efficiencies that you can gain, if you have, you know, 100 people using it and they can save 5 or 10 minutes a day, you can do that math and put a number to it, and that can help make the case.
It's interesting, the ROI is on this real quickly. I mean, we have cases, we have one customer that won a lawsuit, and they credit Meridian partially. I mean, it'd be hard to ever say it was totally to Meridian's credit, but they partially at least credit Meridian to the fact that they won this lawsuit because they were able to produce the documentation that supported their argument. And so that lawsuit, I don't remember how much, but I think I heard it was in the millions of dollars, and they easily paid for their solution right there. I mean, you know, that's in the eye of the beholder, whether that lawsuit really, you know, would have been won or not, but they certainly feel like it helped. So there's a lot of different ways that you have to justify a solution like this.
Okay. Next question. Monty, could you just highlight your current project management tools?
Today, it's a homegrown solution. It's a FileMaker Pro database that was developed years ago, and then we did an overhaul on it probably 5 years ago, and it's still in use today. And there is a roadmap to ultimately switch over to Plan-On for that.
The next one I'll go to. Within the mobile app, when you were looking at a document, how were you filtering on words within the PDF file?
I would open up you have the option of opening up all of our documents that we make available to the trades are all in PDF format. And we choose to open those up with the Adobe Acrobat reader as opposed to the native iOS reader. And in the Adobe app, you have the search capability to search on keywords. Obviously, your PDFs have to be set up to be searchable.
I see questions on here about is the content searchable. I'll just add that not only once you open the file could you search it, but Meridian also has the ability to index the content of files so it's searchable globally across the vault. Obviously, if those documents are scanned, then you would have to use OCR in order for its content to be searched. If they're made from modern applications like Word, Excel, etc., then they're automatically searchable. But yes, I think there was some questions on here about whether you can search content. You can do that across all the documents. You can do it based on metadata, or once you open a document, you can search within the document.
Okay, next question, right? You want me to keep going?
Yep.
Yep.
How many of your 88,000 are photos, and do you find Meridian useful for bulk photo viewing of, say, construction sites?
I'd have to do a query in the database to see how many are photos. It's probably a fairly small percentage, but we are loading photos in there. Actually, what we've been doing is loading in a hyperlink for photos and videos that then takes us out to another application, which is a university-wide application where we store photos and videos. You know, it has a thumbnail viewer in it, but I wouldn't call it like it. Certainly, the web aspect of it is not like a high-end photo viewer. But you can certainly get to the documents, and when I click on them, I download them and I just view them in the native viewer of your whatever machine you're on, whatever desktop you're on.
So Jen, I've been scanning the questions, and we're about out of time here, and I've seen a pretty big theme here from several people that I think I could probably address probably 5 or 6 of these with one commentary. So there's a lot of questions in here about did he have to put these in box to share them with the consultants? Could he have let them get right into Meridian to get to them? And there's quite a few questions along these lines. Security about that. It's kind of a complex challenge because most folks don't want to just let consultants come in and get to everything. They want to say, okay, this consultant can get to this subset of stuff, and this other consultant can get to this other subset of stuff. And that's always a moving target, different consultants, different subsets of stuff. So it gets pretty tricky. Yes, you could expose Meridian directly on the web to your consultants. But most folks, to be honest with you, don't do that because it's so tricky to manage all of the different subsets and the granularity of that. So they choose, like Monty showed, to find what they need and dump it into a box account and then let them just get to that. Some have walk-up stations. I think, Monty, do you even have a walk-up station that you would allow a trusted vendor to go stand at and do some searches themselves?
Well, we can certainly make that available, but I will comment about, we have certain vendors that work with us, you know, on a contract basis. So they're long-term and they touch a lot of different buildings. So we actually have granted them access to the system to go in and get their own documents. You know, we only want to do that with the vendors that we do a lot of work with, because we do have, everything's behind our firewall. So we have to create a sponsored ID for them and get them a Brown ID And then once they have a Brown ID, they can log into our system and we can grant them the access to just the documents that they will need. There's some setup with that, and that's why we kind of limit that just to our heavy hitter contracts, if you will. So.
Great. I also see, did Brown go on-prem or cloud? All of our current university customers are on-premise. We are gradually getting to a place where we might be able to offer cloud solutions to our university customers, but because of the tight integrations that we're typically doing with their other systems, and because some of these files are very large, like Revit models and what have you, there is definitely some argument for an on-prem solution. So we offer both, and the cloud stuff is pretty new. So we'll see how that matures over the coming years and whether that starts to become a more practical solution for our university customer base.
One big question, I'm sure, is more than one person that came out of this that I saw was how many people do you have on staff to maintain this database?
How many people on staff? So, well, there's only one database administrator that we have, and a system administrator to maintain the system. So I have a system administrator on my staff, I have a DBA on my staff, but they're maintaining these in addition to all the other systems. As far as people that are contributing content to it, we have a number of project managers and financial coordinators, and then our CAD group, there's 3 people in our CAD group, and they're the heaviest hitters of this content. Project managers is probably around 8 of them, 8 to 10 project managers, and then another 5 financial coordinators, and then the 3 CAD folks. And then we have some operations folks that are also now getting into the mix with this O&M review that we just showed that we're about to roll out. So we're going to have some more power users as well.
I see some confusion, and this may be the last question, we're out of time, but I do see a little bit of confusion I want to straighten up. There is a standalone mobile solution. Monty showed the solution that was embedded in his Famous app, so it's very integrated to his operations and maintenance side of the house. But he also has the ability to have a standalone Meridian app, and many of our customers have that. So no, the mobile solution is not totally tied to Famous. That's a pretty specific thing that was done for Brown and for a few others that have Famous.
We do have that standalone Meridian mobile app as well, which is for our project managers to use because they don't need the operations tool.
Okay, well, I think we've got to wrap it because we want to honor your time, and we're right at 1 o'clock Central now. But thank you so much for joining us today. You will get some follow-on emails, and you'll get the poll here, or not the poll, the questionnaire when you close out of this today, which we appreciate your response to. But we will be back in touch via emails, and we look forward to answering some of the questions we were unable to answer in the days and weeks going forward. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.